Building the Good Life with John Hope Bryant is brought to you by Prudential Financial.
Michael Santiago Render, better known by his stage name, Killer Mike. He's an American rapper, an actor, and an activist. But that does not tell the whole story. I'll get back to that in a minute. Mike made his debut on Outkast's 2000 LP, Stankonia, and later appeared on their Grammy-winning single, The Whole World, from their Greatest Hits album in 2001. He has since released 5 full-length albums as a solo artist. He is the founder of Grind Time Official Records, which he did in partnership with SMC and Fontana Distribution. In December 2008, he cut a deal with our friend, Atlanta rapper T.I., for Grand Hustle Records. Since that time, he has exploded in relevancy. He's known as a social and political activist, focusing on subjects including social inequality, police brutality, and systemic racism. In addition to addressing these themes of racism and police brutality in his music, he has also delivered several lectures. That's right, he's a lecturer at colleges and universities. He's written about social justice, appeared on business shows, engaged in the political stage. He was born in Adamsville neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia, on April 20th, 1975. Very notably, his father was a policeman and his mother was a florist. Very much like me and my wife, reminds me of butterflies and eagles. His grandparents helped to raise him in the Collier Heights neighborhood, and something else we have in common, he went to Frederick Douglass High School, and the man who ran the Freedmen's Bank that I'm so passionate about was Frederick Douglass. That bank was chartered to teach free slaves about money in 1865. Now, I said there was more about him that I did not mention. Well, that really means that the bio did not mention it. He's hiding in plain sight. As Jay-Z would say, he's not a businessman. He said, I'm a businessman. He also is a partner in Greenwood Bank, or Bank Greenwood. It's not an FDIC insured bank. He'll talk a little bit about that. I know he's dabbling in some real estate and music publishing and producing, and the backside of the business industry, the music industry. He has a barbershop, Swag, which I'm sure he's gonna talk about. He is a bad brother. He's making smart sexy. He's a builder. He's my brother. He's my friend.
Absolutely.
Killer Mike.
How you doing?
All good.
It's good to see you.
Good to be seen. Better seen than viewed.
For real. Better say that.
So if this is a conversation about building,
Uh-huh.
you know, we can say building for what, building when, but let me be provocative and suggest that there's never been a more important time to be a builder in general. But certainly if we're saying that this is a moment in history, and history does not feel historic when you're sitting in it, you know that. You're a historian too. But that doesn't mean that moment is not, in fact, historic. Dr. King walked this whole same city we're in, Atlanta, for 13 years and went to parent-teacher night and,
Absolutely.
you know, the grocery store, whatever. I'm sure people say, oh, that's Dr. King, but it wasn't like every day moment was dramatic. And then we're talking about now a movement that's more in the suites than the streets.
Yeah.
More about civil rights than civil rights, social justice through an economic lens. So why don't you push back on me if I say that, do you agree or do you challenge me that this is now social justice through an economic lens? A new agenda is, at least in part, wealth creation and business.
Well, I can't disagree with you because I'm a product of wealth creation. That what I found is that I don't marry to any extreme. I've been in my time, a fist pumping, shouting radical that yelled, we should lean heavy into socialism and the proletariat should have those rights. And
did you say socialism?
Yeah.
Okay, it's gonna be a hot conversation.
I believe in some forms of democratic socialism.
Okay.
Public school is a socialist concept, arguably. I happen to have went to an unbelievably good public school in Collier Heights Elementary School, and later Frederick Douglass High School.
Right.
So it benefited me
public
well.
good. That's what we're talking about. The public good.
Do I want my money regulated by government, and do I want, I currently pay about 39% tax on $1. Do I always like that? No. Would I like for the 10 cent extra that they like to add to be allocated? I've seen it, yes. So, but what I've seen is, and what I say I'm a product of wealth is, my great grandparents were the children of people who were enslaved. Their first thought should have been of themselves and their own happiness and enjoyment. My great grandmother, my great grandfather, N.H. Blackman and Truzella Blackman, they could have just enjoyed themselves. They could have enjoyed not perpetually living in servitude. But what they did was they worked as sharecroppers. They worked their butts off, their fingers to the bone. They bought over 40-something acres in Alabama, of which some the state had to buy back because of eminent domain, because of creation of a highway. And they made sure that each of their 9 children had an opportunity to own land and to have a start through education. Because my grandparents owned a farm, they could sell to stores, including white stores. Those stores would then pay them the profit that was paid, allowed my grandparents to go to a Methodist school, to my grandmother. My grandfather, on the other hand, his father left when he was 10. He had to work in a sawmill, in a lumber yard. Didn't have to leave him anything. So he had to work and take part in bootlegging to make sure as a young man that he had something to give us. My great-grandparents' farm is still in my family's name. My family still receives money every January or so from a lumber company that owns it. So, although it's Tuskegee, Alabama.
I love it.
The same place that college students use red clay to make the bricks to build Tuskegee Institute. My grandmother wanted nothing more for me than to go to Tuskegee. I ended up going to Morehouse instead. I was like, I just can't go back there. I was too bored, Grandma. That was before I realized how lit their homecoming was. But so I had to understand that at some point, people generations before me made an investment in me.
Yes.
And my grandparents then were not only owners of the house they were in, they owned additional house. That house was used to create a vacation fund, savings fund for me and my sisters. They bought us stocks and bonds when we were really young. So I had to realize a lot of the things that I thought I was fighting against as a child were what gave me the ability to fight against it, because I was a product of it. And what I had to understand was an older black gentleman told me one time, you're either going to be, you say you were born in America, you can't help that. You're going to be a participant in the capitalist system or a victim of it.
Amen.
And since I was cutting grass at about 12 years old, and I thought that, man, if I can get 3 more of the kids to cut grass with me, I could probably pay them at this rate. Since I buy the gas, I got the lawnmower, I could pay myself this rate. I had figured out that it's good to be an owner. My wife and I were having a discussion today when she was like, it's good that you no longer tell people what you make. She said, because sometimes when you tell people what you make, they tend to think you owe them more. I said, yeah. I said, but I'm not cut like that. I said, I've sat next to people that tell me they got $40, $50, $60 million deals. I never envied or wanted that. She said, yeah, but you've never viewed yourself as an employee. She said, so you don't have time to worry about it. She says, you hear it and you get inspired by it.
Right.
And then you say, if my friend can do it, I can do it too. I remember sitting next to one of my dear friends when he got a $40 million deal.
Right.
And the only thing I was happy for him. After he left the room, everybody else grumbled and complained and talked about what they should have gotten. And I realized that she's right. Like, I've never viewed myself as simply an employee. I've always viewed myself as someone who can, who must, who will. So I can't, argue with how people, their point of view of me. But what I know is I'm a product of 2 black people in the very deep and rural South in Tuskegee that decided they were going to make sure their children had it a little easier and their children's children had greater opportunity through being able to be educated and having something. So I'm a product of it.
What you should have gotten already is this is one bad brother. I mean, he just dropped like some intellectual, financial literacy genius from like the west side of Atlanta up, right? And just to clarify, he mentioned the word socialism. What he really, my interpretation of that is, he means the public good.
Yeah.
And I agree with him on that we have a responsibility to socialize our assets for. I mean, why is education, which should be a public good, now a private asset, right? Education should be for everybody.
It should be.
Shimon Peres told me I was in Jordan once that people were going to have a problem with my work and criticize it. And he said, Mike, when they say that, John, you tell them, even if you want to distribute money like a socialist, you have to first collect it like a capitalist.
Yeah.
Tell me, man, how did you get so dang on smart? I mean, I heard. Let me set this up. I first heard you rap or financial literacy rap. I don't mean music rap. Financial literacy rap, business rap, without a script, with no notes. Really 3 times. One at my Hope Global Forum.
Yeah.
You just went in there with Tip, T.I., and a few other, and you just laid it out, and you cleared the floor. I mean, you knew exactly what you were talking about, like, as if you were coming out of a business school. Number 2, you were on CNBC, and you laid it out. And I read some other business publication, and it was an interview and you couldn't tell that you were not a captain of industry, but you're completely down with your community. You're like you don't switch up. You are the same dude.
Yeah.
How did you get so dang gone smart and down to earth at the same time?
Well, I don't consider myself smart. I consider myself a willing student in every situation I go. I just sat with a younger brother who's younger. I went to Morehouse for a year and then I left to pursue music. I went to a brother who graduated, who now is a banker. Had a meeting with him a few hours ago, Brother Ben. And I told him, I said, I'm sitting down as a student. Doesn't matter if I'm older than you. Doesn't matter if I've seen more. None of that matters. What matters is that you know more about finance and industry than I do. So I am not only someone who's about to do business with you, also I'm a student. So anything that I can learn, I'm going to learn. And I've always been like that. Like, I'm here to show up with my ears open. You know, as much as I talk, I listen a lot more.
That's right.
My grandparents, like I said, they never hid the truth from my sisters and I. My youngest sister, LaShonda, who was raised by my grandparents with me, they sat me, Lovey, and LaShonda down. My grandmother showed us how to balance a checkbook. They taught us, you know, why you should buy a stock or a bond, why you should save money. My youngest sister got it so well, she went down to dealer, became an accountant. Now she makes sure people and companies don't go broke. I wish I would have listened more. So I have to give my grandparents, Willie and Betty, a lot of credit because they told us by the time we were born, they was too old to waste time. And they didn't have time to talk to us like children. They talked to us like we were equal, like we were little human beings. So I got to give big credit to them. And I got to give credit to institutions that played a big part. From Harrington Daycare Center, Ms. Harrington sent me into kindergarten reading, whether it was Mr. Twiggs, the principal of my elementary school, or the numerous teachers, many of whom went to historically black colleges and universities. Their life's mission was to make sure that we went into the world prepared. One of my favorite teachers at high school, at Frederick Douglass High School, was a man named Bill Murray. He's co-owner of Murray Brothers Funeral Home. And I tell people, the class was art. I was in the art magnet, I mean, not art, but the art talent center program. I knew how to draw, knew how to sketch, knew how to paint. But I say he taught us how to be entrepreneurs. You know, he was the first person to tell us you should be trying to buy dilapidated houses in the bluff. He said, you can knock it down and just make a parking lot while the Falcons play until change happens. He's 72 years old now.
That's right.
Change is
happening.
You get what I'm saying?
Straight up.
So what I did was paid attention and I believed. And then I remember.
That's $1 billion neighborhood now.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And we own stuff there.
That's right.
Thank God, me and my wife.
So me too.
Yeah, but I remember just seeing people, because I grew up in the Collier Heights, so working class people, and there were like my grandparents, middle class people were there. I remember Dr. Zuela, Dr. Harris, who was Zuela Harris, his mother, who was a psych professor over at Georgia Tech. They lived in our neighborhood. Raheem Biyah, who I think now is Dean of Technology over at Tech, grew up in my neighborhood. So I grew up around a lot of kids who were smart. So it was cool to be smart. It was cool to learn. And being smart is really just about being willing to learn. So, I can't say there was a magic moment. I can just say every step of the way, I wanted to learn a little more. I wanted to know a little more. I wanted to understand how Herman Russell was rich. Because if it wouldn't have been for
Herman Russell, just say, if you don't know, Herman Russell was the wealthiest black man in America, at least in real estate, and to this day, Russell Company is the largest black-owned company, at least in real estate in the country.
Google some of the names that we're saying. So whether it was Herman Russell's house that I would ride by on my bike as a kid and look and say, how'd you get a basketball court and then a tennis court? And later have the opportunity to buy.
And an indoor pool.
Yeah, indoor pool. Like how do you do that to now? God bless the dead, just a few weeks ago, having buried Noel Khalil, who founded the Columbia Company, and also real estate developer who first worked for Herman Russell. Took a $60,000 pay cut to work for Herman Russell and say he learned more making less money and was able to build something on his own. So I've always just been a willing student.
So God gave us two ears and one mouth. We listen twice as much as we talk. That's common sense, but common sense is not so common. Here's something else that's wrong, though. I think society, man, has been hijacked by thug culture.
Thomas Sowell talks about that.
Yeah, and I think, in the last, Quincy Jones says it takes 20 years to change a culture.
Yeah.
In the last 20 years, I think we've made dumb sexy. We've dumbed down and celebrated it. But now people are starting to make smart sexy again. But here's the interesting thing. You said growing up, you always were trying to be around smart people. Okay, cool, got that. I understand that generation. Right after the civil rights movement, that whole piece, we can get away with it. Today, what I find interesting, two things. People make assumptions about you. They see you coming in with some chilled out jeans.
Yeah.
you got your Nikes on.
Yeah.
You got your T-shirt on. You got a little bit of bling, not too much, right?
Nah, just my mom and grandma. Yeah.
That's all. But people are not looking that closely.
Yeah.
people making assumptions,
Mhm.
right? About, well, particularly if you're not from our community.
Absolutely.
And I don't think they would ever assume or presume that all this intellect is inside of you. You don't care because not one ounce of your self-esteem depends on somebody's acceptance of you.
Yeah.
So that's self-esteem, not just confidence. I want to know where that came from. The other side of this piece, though, is you're in the music business principally,
Yeah.
where I would love to say I'm wrong here, that this sort of high-minded, high-frequency conversation we're having right now may not be all that shined upon, but you're accepted as one of the crew. How did you negotiate all these worlds?
I can remember being in elementary school and sitting in class in Miss Pryor's class, and I'm surrounded by like kids who I know they're going to college. They know I'm going to college because people like Asha Jackson are pushing us, and she's now chief judge out in DeKalb County. But as young as 11, Asha would tell us we were going to college. We're in college. She's like, we're going to college. But I can remember being in elementary school class, even though Asha wasn't in that school, she just would encourage us, but like with Tarshell Peoples, it's now Dr. Tarshell. And my friend Sleepy, who was far more intelligent than me in the streets, Sleepy was who didn't even go to my school, was on the court like, fat way. And I wouldn't look. I would just, I'm not going to get in trouble. He was like, I see you after school. But before school, he'd be telling me, you go to school. He said, we might not go to school today, but you going to school. So my friends encouraged me because they saw it early and they didn't discourage. And I went to school with a highly intelligent group of kids, but in different things. Cameron Dollar, 1995 NCAA champion at UCLA. His father, Coach Donald Dollar, coached Frederick Douglass. Cameron was smarter on a basketball court than probably anybody ever seen. He was smart off the court, too. Got solid grades. But on the court, he was fiercely intelligent. So I knew intelligence mattered in sports.
Okay.
Zuela Harris, whose mom, again, was a psychologist, Zuela was fiercely intelligent in class. So if I wanted to do well in class, sit next to Zuela because the competitiveness in me was going to make me the same way I wanted to compete with Cam on a basketball court. So I sought the competition, the friendly competition of my friends because I knew my friends weren't dumb. And I always liked reading. For some reason, I was attracted. I'm dyslexic, but I was always attracted to reading. But because of dyslexia, you have to read things 2, 3, 4, 5 times.
A lot of brilliant people are dyslexic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of folks in the music business, interesting.
Yeah.
Quincy's dyslexic.
Yeah.
Ambassador Young's a little dyslexic.
Yeah.
I mean, so go ahead.
So, but it forces you to focus.
Well, okay.
So now you're not only reading, you're remembering because you're having to read stuff over and
again.
over. So by the time you master reading stuff once or twice, you learn how to lock stuff in. So it's just a condition of circumstance and who you choose to involve yourself with. I knew very young that dumb people or people who pretended or acted dumb did not get treated well.
Whoa. Say that one more time.
People who acted or pretended to be dumb did not get treated well. And I was not into being treated badly. So I presented myself intelligently, and I realized that the results came from it. So I valued intelligence, and I come from a family that welcomes and values intelligence too. So I'm lucky to have been in an environment that was very, it cultivated that. And I try to do the same thing with my children and other children, that from my nieces and nephews to kids that are just family and friends. I try to encourage that because there's nothing that beats a mind that wants to learn. There's nothing that beats a curious mind.
Whoo! If you're in Europe, you got to speak several languages. If you're in France, you have to speak, a little German and a little. I'm thinking about maybe a little German, French, and maybe some Italian. Yeah, some Italian because these are like states. They're right over the border. You got to be multilingual, bilingual. You got to translate. You walk in these different worlds. Yeah. How do you translate and still keep that core of you and keep the respect? I think you let people know who you are from the start. I went to Douglass, but I'm not gonna, being in Frederick Douglass, I knew everybody. I said, I knew the preachers and the thugs. Like I knew everybody, and I wanted to know everybody. Everybody didn't move between groups of friends and culturally different groups. I did because I instantly understood them, and some of my friends were thugging it, and some of my friends were plugging away academically, and I had no problem being with either of them because I was comfortable with who I was already. I
I wasn't ashamed to be smart, and I wasn't ashamed of my friends who was just like, hey man, we're gonna stay and thug it, because they were my friends too. But what I didn't do was succumb to other people's wants or wishes for me. What I did was decide what I wanted for myself. When I heard people like Asha talk about college, it made me know, okay, you got to go to college too. You know, when I heard Mr. Murray talk about entrepreneurship, it made me say, okay, I can do this too. Why am I not doing this? You know, so for me, it was, I've never questioned it. I just did it.
And because you're comfortable with it, you're saying your peers in the music business who may speak only one language,
yeah,
they respect you because you're authentic. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And would you think that they admire it?
I never thought about it. I just knew that they accept me for who I am. I accept them for who they are. Because I don't think these guys dumb at all. If they choose not to, use the King's English like I do, that's fine. They're intelligent. They're intelligent enough to buy property. They're intelligent enough to employ 10, 15, 20 people.
That's right.
You know, I've met some hick talking folks in North Florida, South Georgia. They have a lot more money than me and a lot of rappers. But, you know, their family is on 500 acres and grown for the government for the last 100 years. What I mean? So for me, it's a matter of, you show yourself unintelligent when you don't save, when you don't live below your means, when you don't know how to operate in a room that feels strange to you by simply being your most humble and honest self. That's a sign of low intelligence to me. Woo. Like T.I. uses a lot more, big words than I do, and he was the one that dropped out of Douglas.
T.I. smart,
but he got a firm hold of vocabulary. I tell him all the time, like, you sound like our principal, like Dr. Hill. So you can't assume that man unintelligent. That man has read a thesaurus and knows more synonyms and antonyms than any of us. And that brother is fiercely intelligent from a business perspective.
And he owns a lot of real estate around here and has no debt on it.
No, absolutely. Yeah. He bought it straight out. So for me, I look for intelligence not only in how you sound, but like, what are the sound movements you're making? What's the common sense
movements you're making?
Yeah, that's truly intelligence to me. My grandparents taught me about living below my means. They taught me about doing things that freed you up. Everyone wants money, and everyone, if intelligence equaled money, every college professor would be a millionaire.
That's wisdom there. If intelligence, repeat that again.
If intelligence equal money, every college, professor would be a millionaire.
That's right.
And
you got to be a PhD and a PhD too. You
yeah,
gotta do something.
Yeah, and that's not criticizing college professors.
No, we need college professors, right?
But it's just saying that simply being smart,
it's not enough.
It's not enough.
Right. So I want you to, if you want to, I want to cover a lot of ground on our session together, so people leave better.
Yeah.
I want them to leave this podcast better. But I want you to talk about how you built self-esteem. You've talked around it. I think it had a lot to do with your grandparents.
Yeah.
People like Ambassador Andrew Young and others. But how did you build self-esteem? And I have another question for you.
I remember, man, I got called to play on the, you play shirts and skins basketball. All right, the camp counselor Greg put me on the skins team. Man, by the middle of the game, I thought I was the man. I thought people was cheering for me on the sideline. So a couple of them was laughing at me. My little belly flopping everywhere. But we won the game.
That's it.
And after that, I was skins every game I had to be, because I was playing with the best players on skin. I just had to get the ball protected in the paint and kick it back out to my man, who thought he was Steph Curry before that time. So, once I understood my purpose, my daughter just started playing JV ball. Not a shooter yet, because she just started playing ball. I said, well, they can't stop you from being a great defender. Put your hands up, put your arms out. Don't give them an easy shot. Give them some trouble on the way up.
That's right.
All right, and even the games they lost by 2 to 3 points. They won, they're winning games. So, for me,
she lost, she won. She learned something.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you learn, you're not losing. So,
right.
For me, self-confidence comes from just trying. I knew I wasn't going to be the best basketball player. I was only in school with Cameron Dollar. I knew Cam was going to win a championship when we were 10.
Right.
I knew I wasn't going to play baseball, or like my cousins who were throwing 77 miles an hour at 13 years old, So I had to find what I was good at, and the things I was good at was art, talking, debate, those things. So I embraced the things I was good at. I built pride around those things. And I had a group of friends around me where my talents are needed or called upon. They called me up when the police stopped us. Michael, you're talking. So I knew what I was good at. So my confidence grew out of knowing what I was good at and doing those things, not out of envying and not out of wanting to be something other than myself. And then when Kim Walton told me I was cute, it was she told me that in 3rd grade, it was a wrap. I'm like, I'm good.
Exactly. You know, I'm sitting here listening to you and looking at you with so much pride, man.
And thank you.
I see you and T.I. and others in your ilk as like professional athletes of the voice and of creativity and of,
Yeah.
and of the creative space. I'm a pro athlete, I think, of the mind.
Absolutely.
You know, it's just like at the top of your game, hopefully, in your chosen space. And using that skill and that talent to now create, ripple influence
Yeah.
in other places, which is your activism
Yeah.
and your community involvement. You are walking through the airport in LAX. When you're a public person, your friends don't need to hit you up on text. They just look at TMZ. And TMZ hit you and said, and you said something. Tell them they asked you. I'll tell you because you spout so much. You're asking you basically about the crime in LA.
Yeah.
And they said, what are we going to do about this crime? And you said something really prophetic. You said basically, if you want to stop crime in LA or any place else, you need to have jobs, business, and a home ownership.
Absolutely.
And I put on Twitter a version of that. If you want to stop the crime or step up or start the economic climb in our communities, do these 4 things: jobs, business and entrepreneurship, capital access, home ownership.
Yeah.
The same things that stabilize the grow and grow everyone else, everywhere else, should stabilize and grow us.
Absolutely.
You agree with that?
Absolutely. If you got home ownership, you don't have people living essentially like gypsies. And when you're living like a gypsy, you might not care about the home you're renting. You might not care about the place where you are because you don't feel you're going to be there the rest of your life. The difference in a neighborhood like the one me and T.I. grew up in the time we were growing up in is that people own their homes, so people cut their grass. People made sure their neighbor's grass was cut. If a roof was messed up, people got together and helped with that roof. They helped one another because there was a certain pride in being there. If you can't make sure people are prideful, then you get neighborhoods that are dilapidated. Well, how do people assess pride? Men assess pride by what they can do, what they can protect, what they can provide for. If our young men in particular had trade skills to be able to build themselves, to be able to be hired by contractors that are building skyscrapers, as well as the houses that are around, there's a sense of pride that comes with that. For our kids that are using their mind or have an opportunity to come out of college without the burden of debt, then we can have those minds free to think in new, innovative ways to be making money. If you create that space and you create that opportunity, Andy told me there's nothing that happens politically.
Ambassador Andrew Young.
Yeah. So there's nothing that happens politically that we're not aware of 20 years ahead that's going to happen. So we know that the conditions at the end of the last century were ones that would lead to certain places we are now, and we can start to self-correct those things. If you take the average 8th grader now, if we start teaching that 8th grader financial literacy now, like my man Tony Rexler is into, you're into, Rendell Solomon is into, Robert Smith is into. If we start doing those things right now, then that 8th grader, by the time it graduates high school, is ready to function financially as an adult in a way that 8th graders aren't. If we start bringing back trades to high school, Booker T. Washington High School here not only offered academics 30 years ago, it offered trades, whether it was auto body mechanics, airplane mechanics at George High School. One of my favorite English teachers at my rival high school actually learned how to upholster chairs at Booker T. Washington High School. Then you get people who, while they're pursuing a higher education at your Morehouse, your Clarks, your Morris Brown and Spelmans, can still go out on the weekends and do more than help with Habitat for Humanity, but build their own houses sell on lots that their parents may have bought.
That's right.
And you start to fix the bigger problem because people who are prideful don't need to be running in the stores, grabbing stuff out, taking it because they're able to buy it.
That's right.
My wife called a contractor on a property that I bought for her birthday a few years back, and she sent me a picture of him. And she said,
back up, stop, slow, stop the presses, stop everything, slow the heck up. You're a rapper, you're a singer, you're a TV personality, you're an artist, you're a creative genius. You got blinged up one side down there. That's in your car. Wait, back up. Tell me what you said you bought your wife for her birthday again?
I bought her the house that her grandmother bought. Her grandmother worked as a janitor in the housing projects and owned a liquor house, a shot house is what they would call it in the black community, where you buy, because you used to couldn't buy liquor on Sundays in Georgia. And her grandma would sell shots of liquor, and she saved up that money and bought her a house on Norton Street. I bought that house back from the owner, from who her mom had sold to after her grandmother died. I bought it for her birthday. And
that's making smart sexy, baby.
And that's what I'm talking about. That may be the only piece we don't own together. That's just her house, right? So she sent me a picture of the contractor who'd been a D-boy back in the 80s, and he still had his dope boy jewelry. He still had on a big Run DMC gold. So I was like, okay, this might not be cheap. You know what I mean? But you think about it, you're a little boy, you're coming out on the driveway in the 90s, and you see him. He's not a drug dealer. He's a contractor. There's a contractor here called the Modern Craftsman. You guys go check him out. BJ, he just did that beautiful.
The Modern
bedroom.
Craftsman?
Modern Craftsman, yeah.
That's searchable?
Yep. It's right on IG. But that brother is the brother who did T.I.'s bedroom that he put up.
Okay.
And that beautiful light and sofa. See, it looks like a club. It's so beautiful.
T.I.'s got his own little
the bathroom.
Divine firm. He's about to stand up. Go on IG and look at it.
Check it out.
With T.I. Design. Go
I
ahead.
asked that brother, though, I said, what made you want to be a contractor? He grew up in Chicago. He said, man, I come out. He said, there was this one guy, man, who had beautiful cars, clothes. He said, but it was a van. He was a contractor. He owned this van. He was a contractor. He said, that made me want to do that because he saw that example of success. He saw
what we see.
Yeah, I don't have to be a pimp, a player, or a gangster in order to have a nice car, in order for women to adore, like me, in order to have a nice house. I just have to use my mind and my hands, and that's what he did. And brother's one of the best contractors. I mean, he ain't building low class houses. This brother's, man, I'm talking about. I had him do my basement. I think, Lord have mercy. Boy, I'm so glad he was finished. I paid him. I was like, I'm gonna put some kids through college. But for me, it's just about putting the examples. I got to thank. There was a white teacher named Mr. Jim Berto, and I say that because I grew up in an area where I didn't experience white teachers. I had,
me too.
Exactly. So growing up in Atlanta, there's a man named Mr. Jim Berto. I'll never forget. He drove up to my summer school at Mays, and he says, I gotta being dyslexic. I didn't want to do math all year, so I go to summer school. I figured out going to summer school, I could get my credits in summer school, and that way I could just do an extra art course in the fall and winter.
Okay.
And Mr. Berto said, "How'd you like to learn how to fly?" And I was like, "I love fly. Let's do it. What do we need to do?" And he paid me and Slim from 112 and about 12 other students aviation mechanics and aviation, and that's when I started learning using your mind. And my father would say, who was a blue-collar worker, my father would say, think work smarter, not harder. And I said, man, this is what it's about. It's about figuring out beyond base education, what else can I learn while I'm here? How are the products that I could think of? How are the services I could think of? How are they valuable in the bigger marketplace and world? And what could I do? And I've been sorting it out my whole life. I don't have it all figured out, but I'm figuring it out. I was like, like you said, I own a barbershop. We actually own 3. Whoa. We own the original barbershop on Roosevelt Highway. We own one on Edgewood Avenue.
Give us the name.
The Swag Shop, the Shave, Wash, and Groom Shop. If you look at corporations like Floyd, like Rudy's, like Supercuts, Great Clips, traditionally these are white-owned establishments. These are white thought of. For black barbershops to have such a dominant force in our community, there can be 8 barbershops on one block, like over there on Martin Luther King by the old Pascals. Right. None of them ever closed down. So there's obviously a great business in that. But no one has ever thought, let me build a brand around barbering, a lifestyle brand that masquerades as a barbershop, and let me grow this.
A lifestyle brand that masquerades as a barbershop.
That's what my wife and I are doing with the Swag Shop.
Whoa. You said it again. Your wife and you are doing it.
Yeah, so I'm the co-owner. I always let people know I'm the co-owner.
That's right. So you're doing this with your wife as a businesswoman.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah,
She's sharper than me on business, so I listen to her a lot.
I know there was another time, I'm not going to tell you business, but I know there was another time for her birthday, you gave her some money, put in an investment account or whatever for her birthday.
Yep.
So I want you guys to think about this now. You can go get the purse or whatever you want, but those are depreciating assets. My man is investing in his woman, which is an appreciating asset.
Yeah.
She's investing in appreciating.
Yeah, assets. She still gets some of the dope girl stuff too. Like she got the Gucci boots and the purse. I think I bought her like 30 grand in stock that year, and then another year I gave her like 100 grand for investment. So because I know she's smarter than me on many things, and I don't ever want her to feel as though she's only my wife. She's a fully functioning human being. She's my partner, and I honor that. But I sing it like she's fond of telling me. She said, make sure you tell people. I tell you that I sing and dance for folks for a living. That's what I do. But we ain't singing and dancing once I'm off that stage. We're doing business.
Right. And my wife is, as you know, similarly smart. And she owns real estate in Harlem, one of the few blacks that own property still in Harlem. She is in Miami and in Chicago. I tried to buy her property in Chicago. She's like, no, you're not getting my nugget. This is my little nugget. This is my nugget. I just asked her today to co-chair our family foundation together. And she's like, you mean co-lead, right?
Absolutely. Come on, man.
So look, you said something earlier that reminds me of something Ambassador Andrew Young said. Same thing, by the way, as Dr. King. Dr. King's right arm in the civil rights movement was Ambassador Andrew Young. He said about a decade ago, John, if African Americans and minorities lose political power and civil rights protections, we need the work you're going to be doing because all we'll have is economics.
Yeah.
And he said, I don't think we're going to ever get to this point. I don't think it's going to get that bad, but just make sure you stay focused. And now, unfortunately, we're at this moment, this inflection point, where it looks like this is actually, everything is sort of at risk, and we do need to be about economics. You said something to me. I don't know if you know how much I listen to you. I was in the car. I know exactly where I was. It's 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I was going around a corner at the airport on the freeway, and you said to me, John, black people need an outsized business success story, an outsized business image of itself that's not just limited to entertainment and sports. What do you mean by that?
That we have to understand that the Robert Smiths, the Michael V. Roberts, the John Hope Bryants, the Herman Russells have existed, and we have to understand that they're still in creation and existing now. We have to see ourselves as owners. And I don't mean in an imaginary place, like to see ownership. Tony Rexler is the majority owner of the Hawks. Yeah. A minority owner is Grant Hill.
Yeah, Tony Rexler is my business partner. Yeah. Transparency. Yeah.
And one day they're going to have majority owners that look exactly, going to have more Magic Johnsons than not. So the question becomes, why aren't we talking about that as much as we're talking about the people who sing and dance and the people that run balls? Very important to sing and dance. But when I hear about a player getting a $40 to $100 million contract, my question becomes, who can afford to pay it?
Mm-hmm.
So when you,
as you know, Tony Rexler pays that with his petty cash.
Absolutely.
When you have the billionaire is showing up in a nondescript car, sitting in the 10th row, he owns the team.
Yep.
He writes the check.
Yep.
They cash it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And the ballers are running around with chains on and lease Ferraris and all that stuff. And it's all good.
Yeah, I don't have any problem
with it.
But just Jamal Mashburn it, Shaquille O'Neal it, Magic Johnson. Figure out a way to make sure that your image and what you're doing can make you money in the same way it makes money for others.
And understand the difference between making money and building wealth.
Absolutely.
You can have lifestyle riches.
Yeah.
But you'll still go broke.
Yeah.
You build wealth, and you build wealth in your sleep. Let's. I don't want us to run out of time because I want to get to one of your many ventures, which is Bank Greenwood. But
yeah.
The larger issue for me is I'm going to come back to this issue of this moment in time. Post George Floyd, God bless and God rest his soul. He gave his life so we might have light.
Absolutely.
We are in this inflection point, man. And I don't know if this is going to come around again. But, I think we have 10 years in what I call a third reconstruction period to get this right. And again, social justice through an economic lens, how I frame it. You may frame it completely differently. Why are you doing what you're doing? What are some of the things that you're doing that the audience needs to know about? How can they support it? Let's get into your vision for society right now, and what's the opportunity for not just Black America, but all of America?
Well, let me tell all of America one thing. When the Black economy and the Black community are strong and stable, the wider community is more strong and more stable.
Boom.
All right? So when Black families are strong, the greater community is strong.
We all win.
When Black economics is strong, the greater community's economics is strong, right? That's just what it is. So there should be an interest in strengthening the Black communities from a financial standpoint, because by proxy, the wider community gets stronger. Banks get more loans given. Those loans get paid back on time. Those neighborhoods stabilize. They create better schools because better taxed neighborhoods create better schools, creates better people in the workforce, right? If you don't have a strong Black community, then what you're doing is Achilles healing one of the greatest potential economic driving forces in the world. So we need to end the Achilles tendon tear by finally making good on what this country's promised us, and that's equal opportunity for all. We have not had equal opportunity. I know a lot of my white brothers and sisters listen to the radio on conservative stations, and they hear that things aren't fair. You had to get it out the mud first. Yada, yada, you hear that stuff. But you weren't redlined out of housing for 80 years.
You were enslaved for 270 years.
Exactly.
Jim Crow for 100 years.
And that's not pointing at you.
Right.
That's just saying that your great-grandparents, your grandparents, and your parents had an opportunity to build things like equity that paid for education in a different way. Even in educating students, by you being undereducated, when I say Frederick Douglass to you, you just say, well, wow, that's a piece of black history. You don't understand that's the most photographed person of the 19th century.
That's right.
He was not only an advisor to presidents and kings, he was the person that would have, if Lincoln had not been assassinated, helped Lincoln set this country on a path of true equity for people.
He was a Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Nelson Mandela of the 1800s.
All wrapped into one.
All in one, yeah.
And
Times two.
Absolutely. Yeah. And had the Freedmen's Bank been successful and not been sabotaged and really had been able to see, this country would be stronger economically now because it wouldn't have been walking on an Achilles heel because Jim Crow laws allowed part of it to be kept 80 years behind. So
by the way, he owned $6 million worth of real estate in Baltimore, Maryland.
Absolutely.
And rented it out to working class blacks, which gave him the financial freedom to be a civil rights leader and a social justice leader. Back to you.
Absolutely. So for me, what I want for myself and for my wife is to build our individual wealth, because my grandparents told me, take care of yourself first. That individual wealth will help us take care of, educate, and take care of not only our family, but our friends and families and our direct community around us. The stronger our community is, the more we become a prototype for other communities to do the same. That's why I want Atlanta to win. That's why I want the city of South Fulton to win. I want DeKalb County to win. I want Douglasville to win. I want newly elected people in Cobb County to win that look like me. Because if that happens, then this state becomes an economic example for what's possible in Florida, North Florida, what's possible in lower and eastern Alabama, what's possible in the Carolinas. You have 54% of African Americans living in the South. Imagine if the South, once again, past the King Cotton days, where you had the planter class who used a poor white class as a buffer between them and those people that were slaves, you could finally, in South Georgia, have equality amongst working class men because they're both making equal wages. At the time the civil rights movement was happening, the biggest group of people against unionizing in civil rights were poor white men in Mississippi who were being underpaid by factories, used by a master class who looked just like them, and then pitted against working class men whose fight for unions made it better for everyone. That's the pit we have to stop falling into. What I would like to see for this country is for this country to rise to James Baldwin's challenge and realize that we're not going to pack up and go back to Europe. We're not going to pack up and go back to Africa.
Right, that's right.
What we can do is figure out a cooperative living here, a cooperative push for one America in a way that one America does not have to be ruled by one class of Americans.
That's right.
Not by one color, not by one creed. That we could finally take the best of George Washington Carver with the best of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. We can take the best of Frederick Douglass with the best policies that were signed, even though reluctantly, by Lyndon Baines Johnson. And we could create something that's new and something that delivers on the promise of equality and equity for all. If we could do that, if we were willing to put our egos to the side, this could possibly be the greatest country that ever came.
Amen. And when Madam C.J. Walker, the first black millionaire, won, her white suppliers won.
Yep, absolutely.
When Dr. Dorothy Height, who counseled 12 presidents, National Council of Negro Women, when she advised Eleanor Roosevelt, the white female wife of the president, the whole nation won.
Absolutely.
Today, the color's not white, black, red, brown, and yellow. The color's green.
It always has been.
The color, that's right. It's not red or blue, as in political parties. It's always been green. Yeah. We just never had this straight conversation. I want people listening to this, and please tell everybody to listen to this podcast and pass it on. I want people to listen to this. We need to make things like this go viral. This has been a wonderful conversation. I want people to listen to this who are afraid of black progress. I want them to understand this is about, to quote my friend Stephanie Rule, this is about expanding the table and adding a seat. Mm-hmm. This is not about a zero-sum game of we win and you lose. There's 4 things that have never gone backwards, Mike, in all of world history, American history. Real estate values, they've gone up, gone down. Unfortunately, we've sold on the dip when it went down. Went back up, corrected above the line, came down again, corrected above the line, went back up. Stock market values, same thing. It went up, crashed, went down. We sold in the dip because we were afraid. Corrected financial illiteracy, corrected above the line. GDP, gross domestic product, our income for this country, never gone down. And the prospects of a 55-year-old college-educated white man has never gone backwards in the history of this country. There's nothing from our white brothers and sisters to worry about, because when we win, they win. Yeah. When we succeed, they succeed, because all boats rise, GDP increases, the economy expands. Yeah. I want that message to be heard loud and clear, that either we succeed together as brothers and sisters, or we will die together as fools. Yeah. You can take no pleasure from the fact there's a hole in my end of our boat. And that's why I love, for a guy like you who's got so much social currency, who's so bilingual, I love seeing you go from Wall Street to Main Street. From the Black Street to the Latino Street. Yeah. I love that you started that your music crosses all racial barriers. By the way, tell us a little bit about your music.
I'm one half of a rap group called Run the Jewels. It's me and a white guy from Brooklyn. Okay. Me and Jamie Moline, better known as LP, the creator of Def Jux Records, formerly a member of company Flow. To me, the greatest rapper producer in the world, because he writes his own raps. I sit there and watch him do it. He produces his own beats. I sit there and watch him do it. It took me 10 years to become an overnight success. You know, I tried alone. I pushed along and had moderate success. Had a lot of critical, critical clapping. But what I didn't have I had a one gold record, but I didn't have a hugely successful singles career like my, say, good friend T.I. T.I. can make a hit record and sleep, wake up, do it again after a nap. What I have is one of the most successful touring groups in the world. When LP and I start working together within the first 3 hours, I call the guy who put it together like, we're supposed to be making beats. This is like Bomb Squad and Ice Cube together. Since then, in the last 10 years next year will be the anniversary of rap music. The first solo record he produced that came right out of William Street, not too far from here. And then we formed a group. And there's something about cooperation and collaboration that makes it unstoppable. And he and I have cooperated, collaborated. He's one of my best friends in the world. We make some of the best rap music in the world. We get some of the best shows. And next year, come March, we'll be opening for Rage Against the Machine for the full year. We're going to be out there.
I love it.
You know, and sure. I'm gonna like my wife says, we're going to go make a lot of money. We're going to invest in Barry, and we'll visit in 20 years. You know.
So you're not just doing this for you. Every time you say something, it's a we.
We are.
In other words, you're trying to grow something for your family legacy, your family generational wealth, for your community.
Got to do it.
So you're better. You believe that we're better together.
Yeah, we are. I mean, what are we? You know, what can you? You know, if everyone does a little, nobody has to do a lot. You know, I truly believe that. If all of us do our little part, no one has to do a lot. If there's one house on the block whose yard is constantly unkept, if we as neighbors agree to meet there on Saturday, we could spend 2 hours and that yard is kept all of a sudden. You know, and I'm not saying that because that's a philosophy. I'm saying that because that's what we did in my neighborhood. I remember cutting Miss Ruby's yard, and my grandmother getting $20 one time. I thought I got $20 every time I come in. She was like, no, you're not going to charge her. I was like, why? I said, because she lived here before you did. And she picked up stuff off the streets before you did.
That's right.
And when I understood, whether it was there or us going to Sadie Mae Nursing Home to help people on Sundays, is that you owed something to the people who had laid a foundation before you. And the owing was actual sweat. The owing was your little bit of a piece of your income going into the pot that made sure that groceries, you know, got around. You know, so I owe. So I say we because it is truly we. I can't do this shit by myself. You know, I married the woman I married because, you know, she's a beautiful girl, got great bumpers, you know, top and bottom. But with that said, man, her mentality. I
love it.
Her mentality.
The producer's going to just die over there. Great bumpers, top and bottom.
Yeah, like, you know, she's built like a Ferrari, man, sexy lines, but it's her mind.
And that's Shay and Shay. My Shay and his Shay.
Absolutely. It's her mind. I knew that as an artist, I could get frivolous, I could get dreamy and flighty. She wants to know the numbers.
Right.
You know, and that's important that you have that balance. Proverbs 31:10-31 talks about that, talks about the type of woman. And I was raised in church, but I'm not the most religious guy. But the lessons and the moral lessons that you learn, I've kept for most of my life, and I appreciate my grandmother for imposing them on me.
I was talking to my Shay this morning. That's where my Shay loves your Shay.
Yeah,
and
they homies.
Yeah, homies. I was talking about they hung out so late one night. I had to go home and go back and pick her up later. But I was talking to her this morning about a donation that we're going to make, and wanted to check it with her, make sure she was cool with it, from a transaction I'm doing. And she's like, "This is cool, John. It's really nice you're doing it. What are you getting?" She's like, what? I don't see anything in here about what you get. Like,
Yeah.
man, you're not gonna spend all this time building up this company, whatever, and then you don't get anything. Now that dog don't hunt. Charity starts at home. She wanted to make sure that her man was okay.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you need something other than just arm candy.
Yeah.
Just something other than cute. Look, when you go to folks, young people, there's some young people watching, listening to this podcast. I want you to do something. When you go to the COVID friendly vaccinated club. By the way, I got the booster shot and just walked right through some COVID stuff last week without being touched. So I'm telling you, the booster shot works. But you go you go to the vaccinated club or whatever, and you in there and you see somebody attractive. The guy, you see a fine woman. Ladies, you see a handsome man. You say, "Oh, baby, you're so fine. You're so good. That's cool. By the way, what's your name? Okay, cool. What's your credit score?" You want to ask what their credit score? What are you passionate about?
Yeah.
What's your purpose?
Absolutely.
Are we better together?
Absolutely.
Because 2 + 2 should equal 6 or 8.
Yeah.
Can you raise children? Can you run a household?
Yeah.
If I build a house, can you turn it into a home?
Yeah.
What's your vision? We're going to build something,
Yeah.
or we have. This is your partner. This is your business partner.
Absolutely.
Your life partner.
Absolutely.
It's serious, right?
Absolutely.
So Mike, let's let you drop the mic here as we wrap this thing up, man. If this all is about building, right?
Yeah.
This is about building the good life.
Yeah.
And I don't tell people what good life they should want. I'm just talking about building self-esteem,
Yeah.
building your community, build your spirituality, build your net worth, build your financial literacy.
Yeah.
What's your building, as we wrap this thing up, what is your building advice that you have for the listeners? What vision do you have that you want to leave these folks with? And by the way, when you finish, how can they reach you? How can they support you? But and we didn't talk about Greenwood. So you can include that if you like. But what is, before we get out of here, what's your building pearl of wisdom?
Well, follow at Bank Greenwood. Follow at Killer Mike. And you can learn more about Greenwood. We're going to be talking about this. It's a fintech company. It's focused on the Black and Latinx community, focused on building wealth, focused on making sure we are banking and not just simply check cashing places for bears. In terms of what's my personal philosophy on building, I don't know if it applies to you, but what I do know, what has helped me is in dreaming far bigger than I currently dream. That means whatever my biggest dream is now, force yourself to dream bigger. I wanted to own my uncle's garage. He was the first business owner that I just admired. And my wife says, now that you've gotten a building to do your offices, I'm going to take this and we're going to go 4 floors up. We're going to build apartments. I never thought of that. She thought of that, So be with someone that thinks or dreams bigger than you if you're not. Live less than people suspect. Live below your means. If you can get the $1 million home, get the $500,000 home. You know what I mean? Right. You don't have to show everything. I always tell people, be cool, act lame. Whoa. Be rich, play broke. Those are the things. And this is all things I just learned from old people. You know what I mean? So be modest. Like for the jewelry I have on today, I have lots more jewelry. I wore this just because this is my mother and my grandmother. This watch I bought off a widow who just had, she didn't want to keep her husband's watch. She didn't want someone to have it who wouldn't care about it. So right. I bought it off. I never would have bought a Rolex with diamonds.
You're right.
But if it would help a friend out and it'd keep it around and she'd know how to take care of it, I did it. Right. My favorite Rolex is a Submariner my wife bought me for my birthday with no jewels in it. It's just beautiful blue and gold. I'd always wanted a Submariner. Didn't need a watch after that. So I try my very best to live like my grandfather. 50, I'll probably just start wearing overalls and work boots like him. So, be cool, act lame. You know what I'm saying? Be rich, play broke. Just be modest. My friend Bear told me, Bear Loke of Bear Strong, shouts out to them. They just collected a bunch of money and stuff for kids who don't have Christmas and essentials like, the underwear, socks, the winter coat, stuff like that. And we're going to go to 4 Seasons, I think, this Sunday and give some stuff away. But Bear says, when you hear the meek shall inherit the earth, you often think the meek people aren't weak. A meek man will have a sword and have the ability to kill you, but simply because he knows you're a fool, won't. He says, so the intelligent will, those that are prepared for war but don't have to engage in it, those are going to be the inheritors because they're using their mind. If you read The Art of War, it talks about the ultimate form of war, being able to solve the problem with your mind. It talks about the brother whose name is known not even outside the house because he can see sickness before it ever forms and correct behaviors that start sickness. So just try to be that. Try to use your mind on a daily basis. Think. It's nothing shameful about making a mistake. Make the mistake, learn from the mistake, adjust, and try it again. You know, give yourself some time and give yourself a break. Don't beat yourself up for failing. You know, I would almost say expect failure. Don't expect failure and just lay there and say I failed, but expect something not to go perfect. So when it doesn't, you learn from the imperfections and you start to appreciate the skills you developed as a result of it. That's all. And accept correction. You've had to call me and correct me. And you have to accept correction. You know,
It was done in love.
but absolutely, it was done in love, and you wouldn't have corrected me. Some people, you know, when people don't love you, they'll just watch you fail and watch you be a fool. But accept correction. You know, I know people are used to hearing sexier stuff, but you know, it very, very plainly, very, very simple stuff. Very, very using common sense. You know, trusting your intuition when something sounds too good to be true. You know, doing your homework, really doing your due diligence, that type of stuff comes into play, you know, and I think you'll be okay. And realize that, much like my great-grandparents realized, we are the cornerstone for something greater. My great-grandmother, I knew since I was 10 years old, I think, when she died, but I was the sickly child. They sent us to the farm. I got asthma. I can't do much. I'm scared of everything. You know what I'm saying? I'll never forget a dog. I had a chicken. And I went in and I said, Big Mama making the dogs at the chicken. She came out, pulled a 22 like out of an apron, pow, popped the dog like a wild dog right in the thigh. It skidded out of there. She picked up the chicken, rang the neck. The chicken head is in her hand. The chicken I was just playing with is running around headless. She looks at me and says, go fetch me some water. And so I run out the back door all the way to the lake. And I tell my cousins, like, Big Mama went crazy. She killed the dog. She killed the chicken. She's going to kill us all. And they laughed at me. The girls brought the water back. That water was boiling. That chicken was plucked. That chicken was on the table at 3:30 because she wasn't going to waste that chicken, even if the dog had it. But she took me behind the house later on, fed me some ice cream, and just kind of sat and had a moment with me, because what she understood is that I was afraid, I was scared, but I wasn't above learning.
That's right.
I had to understand where food really came from. I had to understand in the process to learn not to waste. And I had to learn to not to let fear consume me. And after that moment, I was never the same. After that moment, I was much stronger on that farm. After that moment, I was much more brave, much more adventurous. But it took her having to show me the world is hard. The world is not fair, but you're built for it. You're a child. You're mostly made of water. You fall, you'll get back up, wipe you off. You know, I'll never forget one time I peed in my pants on the farm. She just put me in front of a fire, let me dry out, sent me back outside. You know what I mean? So, and I have been blessed to have been around people that did not protect me from struggle. Run into the fight.
That's right.
You know?
That rainbows after storms.
Absolutely.
My man is taking you around the corner from his southern house, set you down on the porch in the porch and the patio in the back. And he gently educated you, and he tried to separate you from your fears and infect you with his hope. This is why I love this man. This is why he's so special. Why we don't have time for, we can't put all this wisdom in one podcast, why you got to come back.
I will.
But this is a beautiful dude, and I want you to do me a favor and buy his music, support his movies, support his movement, go to his concerts, because we want guys like this and ladies like this to win.
Absolutely.
This is Killer Mike, a.k.a. Michael Santiago Render, a.k.a. Philosopher Mike. We're out.
We're out.
Man.
Love and respect.
Love and respect.